There we go. What good would it be if you can't hear me? Oh, great. And it looks like I'm lagging a little here, too. Huh. Let me know, Ford Nation, let me know if it's lagging too bad here. It looks a little weird on my end. My equipment's strange because I go to and from work and take my stuff. I never have the same setup, so I have to adjust it, etc. But hey, thanks for being here. I'm sure someone will let me know if I'm lagging. It's a little bit laggy. Let me try something. Bear with me for 1 second. Oh, YouTube was fine? As long as you guys say YouTube's fine. Because I could do this. And that should end the lag. Though it makes the quality crappier. We'll do this for now. I'll mess with it later. Who cares if I'm a square instead of a rectangle? So, sorry about that. Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. So, yeah. I think I'll be more calm today. I don't know why. I'm in a good mood despite things being kind of rough. Hey, guess what? My county's going to code yellow, which means I don't know quite. Some places could open up, but there's certain restrictions being placed on, etc. No one really knows what's going on. Of course, as states are opening up, we're seeing more and more propaganda. More models are coming out that deaths will increase. Did you know? Like, I read an article today that said in Tampa Bay, you know, when Florida opened up, within the first day of opening up, they saw a spike in the increase in the amount of deaths. Unfortunately, the deaths take almost a 2-week incubation period to even see symptoms of the virus, let alone the time after that you would need for a death. So, what, 3 weeks at the shortest? But hey, that won't stop the fear-mongering propaganda, right? Woo! Away we go. Now models are suggesting that if all these states open up, 300,000 could be dead by the end of June. Wow. Almost like the lockdown did nothing. Huh. So what? We just have to lock down indefinitely, I guess would be their argument. So we'll get to all that as we go on here. But yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Just a couple of show notes. I'll be doing a live stream on Sarah Corrier's channel tomorrow night. Time to be picked later. Oh, my sound's up. So we'll see exactly what time that is. I'll be doing a video. If you checked out the guest I had last week, Billy Allred, I'm going to get his audio up later today of his confrontation with police outside Governor Wolf's house. If you didn't see that interview, you should check it out. Billy's a really great guy. He's a township commissioner who went to Governor Tom Wolf's place, actually had a decent conversation with him, but then was harassed by security and threatened and etc. So he has audio of that. He didn't want to video record, but he did record audio of that incident. So I'll hopefully have that up later today. So kind of a companion piece to that live interview that I did last week. And then supposedly this Saturday, I'm going to be doing a 2-hour radio program with my friend Todd Bartley again from 104.1 FM, Talk Williamsport in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I think that's going to be around 11 o'clock Eastern, but as I get more details of that, I'll let you know. So it'll be me, my friend Carlos, and Todd, who's the best reporter I've seen in the country covering this virus. So it should be an interesting show. So let's get right to it today. These Wednesday shows are always hit and miss. Well, for me, they're always hit. But I do home health care. I'm there 24/7. I might do a small video here or there while I'm at work, but it's hard for me to really do the research and the stuff that I would like to. And so I just kind of give my feelings of the day when I finally get off work. So this is me. You got me as soon as I'm home. Yeah, I'm in Pennsylvania, by the way, battery addiction. So my initial thoughts are of what's going on today is I watched Tucker's program last night, and I follow a guy by the name of Phil Kerpen. I knew Phil from my time in debate. He probably doesn't remember me, but he was friends with my coach. He's a really interesting and intelligent guy. And he actually helped me one debate tournament and kind of gave me a lot of confidence and some arguments against sort of this left-wing progressive nonsense that runs rampant in the debate community. So I follow Phil on Twitter, and he has a lot of good information on many things, but on COVID specifically. And he was talking about something that I saw Tucker talking about last night, and I admit that I've been woefully inadequate of covering this part of COVID. And that is I've done a good job, I think, in talking about how there's two types of ways to deal with a deadly virus. If you have a deadly virus that has a really high mortality rate, something like Ebola or something like that, the way to deal with it is to get ahead of it, lock down before it spreads, and then have a serious lockdown. Not the candy stores open, the landscaping businesses open, the tire shops open, but to have a serious lockdown that says basically you could get groceries, that's it. And then have it be a limited lockdown, but it's designed to kind of take care of that disease before it gets spread widely. But then there's a type of disease that could kill a lot of people, like the flu. And the reason the flu kills a lot of people, it's not because its mortality rate's really high. It's because it infects so many people. And so it has a relatively low mortality rate, but it affects millions of people. So therefore, a lot of people are going to die. And mostly it are people that have other health conditions, whether it be elderly people, people with obesity, diabetes, respiratory problems, things like that. That's the category that COVID falls into. Am I saying that COVID's the exact same as flu? No, I don't know. From the get-go, I've told people I'm not an epidemiologist, so I'm not going to make those type of claims. But it's at least more along that lines of a disease than it is along the lines of like an Ebola or leprosy or something like that. So the problem is that we're approaching COVID with these lockdowns as if it's the former type of disease, and it's not. And not only does that cause harmful side effects to our rights and to our economy, but it's actually the wrong way to deal with the disease in the first place. And we could tell that because we could see countries that didn't lock down that are basically right in line per capita with the amount of deaths that we see with countries that had significant lockdowns. The UK now in Europe has the highest per capita death toll, and it also has basically the most stringent lockdown. Sweden has a less per capita death toll than the UK, and yet it didn't have a lockdown. So how is that possible? And I'll get more into that discrepancy later, as you've heard me talking about that sort of stuff lately. Anyways, we're starting to see that the lockdown then not only crushed the economy and took away rights, but it didn't protect us at all. When we look state to state or country to country, the lockdown seems to be irrelevant. The curve looks the same every single place. And the reason for that is something that you've heard on this show and others, which was that the virus was already widespread. We were lied to. They were wrong about the mortality rate. The truth is it's way more widespread and has a far lower mortality rate. And this is something that I've talked about, and I've had a couple people in real life ask me, can you explain this a little better? So, again, I'm no epidemiologist, but it just makes sense like this. The exact portion, like let's say they said the mortality rate was 5%. That's not what they said, but 5%. That's, by the way, that is what some of the numbers seem to have suggested, though every credible scientist admitted it's not going to be that high. But let's say 1,000 people got COVID and 100 died of it. That'd be 10%. But then let's say instead of 1,000 people, it turned out there were 100,000 people in total that had it. It was just that 99,000 of them didn't show symptoms. But still that same 100 died. That means that the disease is 100 times less lethal than we originally thought. The direct proportion of the people that had the disease that you weren't counting is directly proportional to how lethal the disease is. So if 50 times more people had the disease than we previously thought, then the mortality rate of the disease is 50 times less. It's exactly proportional. And so that's what happened. Now, does that mean that it's not something to, our doctors shouldn't be focused on, things like that? Of course not. It being very widespread, in one way, is very good news because it proves that the mortality rate of the disease is way smaller. But it also proves that the disease is already in a lot of communities. So what that shows, it's twofold. One, the mortality rate wasn't the fear-mongering scare tactics that was being presented to us by models such as the Imperial College model that predicted 2.2 million Americans dead and was largely responsible for allowing politicians to enforce a lockdown because they cited these study numbers. So that mortality rate was grossly over-exaggerated. But it also shows that the lockdown was irrelevant from the get-go. Because the only way the lockdown could be effective is if you lock down before the virus gets widespread. And now we know that the virus was already widespread. Therefore, the lockdown did nothing. Now, they said, well, the lockdown was about stopping hospitals from being overwhelmed. But we saw no evidence that hospitals got to that point of almost being overwhelmed. And if the virus was here much earlier than anticipated, then there's no reason that we wouldn't have seen that overwhelming of hospitals much sooner than we anticipated. But we didn't. And even if that is the argument, there was only certain places that there was a potential for overwhelmed hospitals, such as inner cities, such as New York. So why would we be shutting down the whole country over this? That makes no sense if it was really just about stopping the curve. Now, I've said all of this. Here's the part that I missed, and shame on me for missing it. I said that the way we should do is protect the vulnerable population, do what we can, put government resources into helping those populations instead of basically locking down the whole country and treating everything equally. But I missed the actual evidence of what was going on. And so now we're starting to see tallies. In many states, over 50% of those that have passed away, and this is the same in many countries as well, are in nursing homes or long-term care facilities. Now, this is tragic. On one hand, I'm not in this camp that says, well, if it's only killing old people, who care? No. Every death is tragic. I get that. Now, there is an argument to be made, though, that perhaps these people would have died of other causes if they're in these facilities anyways. I'll talk about that more later. But still, the deaths are tragic. If it's connected to you, of course you'll realize without thinking it's tragic. If it's your grandparents or parents or something like that. But it turns out, not only has our one-size-fits-all approach contributed to these deaths that occurred there, but we're actually seeing some places enact policies that are directly leading to more deaths in these nursing homes. So that's two separate arguments there. One, the fact that we're allocating resources evenly to shut down everything means that we're not hyper-specifically allocating resources directly to those that would most need them, the nursing homes. And second, they're then, aside from improperly allocating resources, enacting policies that are actually jeopardizing the nursing homes even more. Now, there was a guest on Tucker last night. He was only there 2 or 3 minutes, so there wasn't a lot to it. But he spoke to this. And what we end up seeing then is if you have all these states that are 50% of the people that pass away are in nursing homes, why then wouldn't it make sense? If you're not trying to use this to crush the economy or to maybe not crush the economy. I think some people that's what they want. But to get a massive growth of government power or to, have this lockdown for whatever reason that they want it. I have my theories, as I've talked about. I think it's globalists wanting to end the middle class. But whatever. If it wasn't just a power grab, if it actually was, as they tell us all the time, we're concerned about lives, saving lives, then why wouldn't you put resources to the place that could save the most lives? And second, why can you then use those numbers of those that died in the nursing home to tell other people that they have to stay locked down even if they're not in jeopardy of dying from this virus? Both of those things suggest to me that this is pure propaganda. It's not about actually saving lives. It's not about actually keeping us safe. It's about a power grab. So what I want to do is bring up, let's see if this works. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Oh, that's my reach stream. I want to bring up some of these threads. So here's thread number 1. Let's make sure y'all can see this. Nursing home residents comprise 57% of all COVID deaths in Spain, 53% in Italy, 45% in France. This is why we should protect the vulnerable. Here's the study. Here's things that led to it. Let me go back to the way it was. Staff who worked while symptomatic. Staff who worked in more than one facility. Inadequate familiarity with adherence to personal protection equipment guidelines. Challenges to implementing proper infection control practices, including inadequate supplies of PPE and alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Delayed recognition of access due to low index of suspicion. Limited availability of testing. Difficulty identifying persons with COVID-19 on the basis of signs and symptoms alone. Now, all of those things, having proper PPE, having employees that you had working while symptomatic, All of those things could have been alleviated or possibly even eliminated if instead of directing our resources to the country as a whole and saying, hey, Clarion County, that you've only had a handful of cases, we're going to enact the exact same policy there as we are in Philadelphia. We're going to have the same policies in New York as we are in South Dakota. Instead of our federal and state governments doing that, if they would have, instead of focusing all their powers on, arresting people trying to open tattoo parlors or hair salons, they would have actually put resources into these nursing homes, we could have curbed the amount of deaths. That's 50% of deaths. Now, could you have saved everyone? Of course not. But this is what I talk about when we're talking about triage. You look at the most vulnerable, the people that are most likely to have the worst effects, and you work on them first. You work on getting them better first and protecting them first. Why are we doing the opposite? We're treating nursing homes like they're an afterthought. Instead, we're putting all of our resources in, don't go to the beach, healthy people, shut down this company. Don't allow people to go to work. Don't allow people to go to the restaurant. Why is that the case? And the people that are suggesting this smugly tell those that have questions with this, talk about the violation of rights and the destruction of the economy. They tell us we don't care about lives lost. Well, if they really cared about lives lost, why aren't they advocating putting more resources into these nursing homes specifically? Now let's move on. Nursing homes and other long-term care facilities house some of our sickest patients, and it's apparent we have no cogent strategy to protect them. As of April 14th, the most recent posted at the time of this tweet, New York State had 3,060 COVID deaths of nursing home, 28% through that date in the nursing home. Massachusetts reports 47%, Pennsylvania reports 51%, New Jersey reports 40%. Now, Pennsylvania revised April 29th. Now it's 65% of all PA deaths are nursing homes. Chicago Sun-Times says elderly care facilities have accounted for 44% of Illinois' deaths. 80.7% in Minnesota has been nursing home deaths. And then Phil says here, I want to quote some of Anish Koka's horrifying tale for some insight into what went wrong in Philadelphia and likely many other places. Quote, as one of the medical caretakers at a nursing home, I thought it was obvious that patients who had become infected needed to be rapidly removed from the nursing home. What I found was a local Department of Health that was laser focused on keeping patients in nursing homes. Philadelphia hospitals had been emptied, waiting on a New York-style surge that never came. But at this point, the nursing homes unfortunately had started to see their first infections, probably seeded from the nursing home staff. We looked for help. We asked the Department of Health to allow us to test everyone at the nursing home in order to effectively cluster everyone with COVID in one unit. They refused because the guidelines didn't recommend this for those that were asymptomatic. We were asked to utilize a large room to cohort patients with COVID. Nursing home administration and the Department of Health said this wasn't possible. I spoke to a nice hospitalist at another large health system who was very receptive to the idea of boarding COVID positive patients from the nursing home in an half-empty hospital to avoid the entire nursing home eventually becoming infected. An email chain followed to get permission from administrative units. Absolutely not was the answer. I was told the more fruitful endeavor was to discuss advanced directives with the residents. Did they really want to be resuscitated if they get too sick? And if they didn't want to be resuscitated, did they really want to go to the hospital? The implicit message? Keep the residents away from the pristine hospital. If they get too sick, hopefully they don't need to be resuscitated. Now, think about this for a minute. Do you see what they're saying there? Nursing, this is just in Philadelphia, and no doubt it's happening all across the country. And this goes along with the story that I'll share at the end of this that personally affected me in my life. Hospitals are being fit with this one-size-fits-all approach, both in my state of Pennsylvania, but also federally, it's the country as a whole. So everyone's saying, oh, we're worried about a possible ventilator shortage and overrunning these hospitals in New York. This never happened, by the way. But the fear of that happening was then spread to every hospital in the country. Even if it was a small rural county hospital, They too had the same fears. So what they did as a result was they emptied out their hospital. They said, we don't want people with non-essential surgeries. We don't want people coming here with pain issues or things like that. They basically want their hospital to be empty and ready for the millions of people that were going to flood in with the coronavirus. Only that never made sense in the majority of hospitals. If anything, it would only be inner city hospitals, and even at that, there was no evidence it was going to be every city. Even the cities they thought were going to get that bad didn't get that bad, like New York. And so they're actually harming real people by not allowing people with real issues into the hospital. As a result, we've seen hospitals across the country losing money hand over fist and furloughing their employees. What more do you need to say that in an epidemic that we're being told warrants the taking away of our rights and the shutting down of our economy unlike we've ever seen? During that time, we're actually losing healthcare professionals. What is the possible explanation other than pure mismanagement of our hospital resources? That's exactly what the shutdown has been. Now, the other side of that is we actually had people with COVID, the most vulnerable populations that were being told by people involved in the Department of Health in Pennsylvania not to send people from nursing homes to the hospital because they were worried, allegedly, this is their claim, that there was going to be an overrun on the hospitals. So they basically signed the death warrant of these people in nursing homes that were sick, said, no, don't take them to the hospital. Instead, ask them if they really want to be resuscitated if they get too bad. That's appalling. That's unforgivable. This is the same crew, the same people advocating that are the ones advocating the lockdown that say people like me that had a problem with this lockdown are the ones that don't care about human life. I'm not signing anyone's death warrant like that. I'm not telling people they can't go to the hospital. That's them. Now, how does this make any sense? How is this? This is all in the name. Again, let's apply the best possible motivation. Let's say the people making these decisions actually did want to save the most lives possible. How can they not see that their sheer incompetence actually has led to more people dying? Then they use the number of people dying as a result of their incompetence to prove that we should further listen to them and their strategy. I mean, this is what you often see with things like the war on poverty. So you have bleeding heart left-wing people that say, oh, look at these inner city communities. There's so much problem there. We need to throw money at the situation. We need to treat them like they're different, like they need to be babied, etc. And then they do that and the problems get worse generationally. So instead of saying, geez, since the 60s, we've been issuing these war on poverty policies and they've made the problem worse every year, maybe we should try something new. Instead, the people advocating in a push for that policy for 50 plus years say, see how things are bad? That proves we need more of our policy. That's what we're seeing here. See? Look at how many people are dying. But wait a minute, they're dying in these nursing homes that you said these people weren't welcome to go to the hospital. So of course they died. Well, hey, that's proof that you have to listen to me even further. And we need more of a lockdown. Let's go on. And now Medicare is paying nursing homes 4 times more per day to take COVID patients. What are we incentivizing? Exactly. Just like hospitals are incentivized to write COVID on the cause of death, nursing homes are now being incentivized to take COVID patients and not send them to the hospital. They're getting 4 times the money if they don't send them to the hospital. Now, we hear stories all the time of nursing homes engaged in shady practices. Heck, what's Better Call Saul? It'll show you. You really think there aren't nursing homes saying, hey, if it comes to us getting $1, 4 times more money if we keep them here? You think that they're making the best decisions and the financial motivation isn't coming into their belief? I don't. New Jersey death rate now over 50% in nursing home. New York's updated shows more nursing home. Expect to see more revisions. Phil says this explains why New York's number seems low. Exactly how many nursing home residents have died remains uncertain despite the state's latest disclosure, as the list doesn't include nursing home residents who were transferred to hospitals before dying. Some important perspective. Not sure if this changed, but a study of nursing home deaths from 92 to 2006 found 65% died within 1 year of admission, 53 died within 6 months. Pennsylvania has cleared another big backlog of unreported deaths, today taking the state's total up to 3,012 and the nursing home total up to 2,029. 2/3 of all Pennsylvania deaths, nursing home. Massachusetts is at 60%. New Jersey's at 50% now. He quotes someone that says, this shows that targeted measures aimed at nursing homes would really have saved lives, but governments chose to police whole societies instead. That's worldwide. Again, what did I say? And it wasn't just me. I was looking at doctors. There was a doctor that Ben Shapiro interviewed. There was a doctor in Germany who sent a letter to Merkel. And I covered all this back in mid-March. And both of these doctors were saying what we should be doing instead of locking down entire countries is letting people go back to work, letting populations that aren't really at risk for serious side effects or serious effects of COVID to continue on with their lives as best as possible, but do everything we can to protect the most vulnerable population. Instead, we did the opposite. We locked everything down, policed people, broke up people at beaches, arrested hair salon owners, and did almost nothing. In fact, worse than nothing. Encouraged people to die in these nursing homes. Nursing home deaths now at 60% in Maryland. Go away. And there's the international data. But you could see, that's the problem with nursing home. Now, one more on this. 2,000 of Pennsylvania's 3,000 COVID deaths are nursing home residents, and Governor Wolf is cracking down on drive-in movies, while his Department of Health does this. This is from the Pennsylvania Cumberland County Coroner today. Quote, sadly, we must report we have had 31 coronavirus deaths reported to our office, 14 of which are from one nursing home. The doctor at that nursing home has asked the Department of Health to test everyone in the nursing home so he could get a handle on how to deal with it. However, the Department of Health refuses to do so. Is the Department of Health really acting in the best interest of all Pennsylvanians? That's what we're seeing. Now, listen. It sounds jargonistic and it sounds complicated, but here's the overarching picture on this. We could have done more to save lives if instead of taking a virtue signaling one-size-fits-all approach that relied on stripping people of their rights and collapsing the economy, we'd have taken a more nuanced, difficult approach of looking what the vulnerable populations were, putting our resources there, and ensuring that they had the best chance of survivability. What are the explanations for not doing that? There's only two: incompetence or corruption. And again, neither is good. Then the fact that they use those deaths due to their incompetence or corruption, these governments, and they say, see how many people are dying? That proves that you have to give us more power. You have to listen to us more. That's what makes this truly disgusting. So at the same time, we have governors virtue signaling to us, oh, you can't open your store. You need to sacrifice. If you want to protest government, you're endangering lives. At the same time that my governor, Tom Wolf, did that. He said, don't go to Harrisburg and protest. You're jeopardizing lives. Let me tell you some other stories about Pennsylvania, because that's where I'm at. I know small business owners here that own bars or restaurants. I was told by one of them that the LCB once a week is sitting out. That's the Liquor Control Board. Is sitting outside their place of business to make sure that they're not opening it. The only reason he found out was he was there early cleaning up and saw a car sitting there and assumed it was a customer and said, hey, we're sorry, we don't open until 4 o'clock. They do takeout only now. And the person said, oh no, I'm not a customer. I'm with the state to make sure that you don't open up. That's where we're using our resources, to make sure that that guy doesn't open up his restaurant. Instead of having resources going to the nursing homes where people are actually dying. But then Governor Wolf and his team virtue signaled to the rest of us, oh, if you want to protest this, then you don't care about the people dying. You're endangering people. Now, that's not to mention that we've seen all over the country and the world, in fact, the same people that are preaching these enforcing lockdown to us are violating it themselves, and they act like it doesn't matter. Check out, again, I saw this on Tucker, but you could find the video of the mayor of Chicago. She told people that they couldn't go out and get their hair cut. Then she went out and got her hair cut. And her answer was quite literally, hey, I'm on TV all the time. I'm the face of the fighting the virus here in Chicago. So of course I have to look good. I take my hygiene seriously. So you, the little person, the normal American, who cares if you take your hygiene seriously? Who cares if you like to look good? You need to suck it up, or you don't care about people. But the mayor, she's important. She's not like you. How about Chris Cuomo, the media angle of it, whose brother's running New York? He virtue signaled us every day. He was hallucinating. He had the COVID so bad. Yet that didn't stop him from going on a bike ride after being diagnosed with COVID and confronting neighbors that told him, hey, don't you have the virus? Aren't you supposed to be self-isolated? Instead, he attacks the neighbor. Then, in a surreal WWE-like moment, CNN pretends as if we didn't all hear this audio of Cuomo admitting that he broke quarantine and doing a special segment of him finally coming out of quarantine, coming out of the basement. Why would we believe anything CNN says? They're blatantly lying to us about something that's provable. Like that. Yep, here they are. They lied to us about it. We see, for example, de Blasio, who told people that they shouldn't be going out of their way. They should stay in their area. Yet he's going blocks away, or miles away, to go to parks that he likes. He's going to a gym that he likes. When asked about it, de Blasio said, my gym's important to me. Oh, so you see, de Blasio's a special, important person. Exercising in his gym's important to him. If gym's important to you, sorry, you're not an important person like de Blasio. Or how about the last video I just did? The non-live video, which I really encourage people to like and share. That's Neil Ferguson you'll see there. Neil Ferguson, he was the person who was in charge of the Imperial College model. Again, the model that told us 2.2 million Americans would die and 500,000 Brits would die if we didn't do the lockdowns. Now, famously, 2 days after Britain did their lockdowns, he went from 500,000 dying to 20,000. 25 times more people would die, he says, if we don't do the lockdowns. He then made the media rounds telling people over and over again how important it was for them to stay locked down. If they didn't, they were jeopardizing people's lives. Meanwhile, he was diagnosed with corona. So what did he do? He invited a married woman to his home several times to have sex with her. That woman then went back to her family with children and husband and was at one point worried that her husband had contracted the coronavirus. Now, this wasn't a doctor who didn't think he had the virus. He was diagnosed with the virus. He said that if we have people diagnosed with the virus, even if you're not diagnosed and you're not following these social distancing lockdown measures, that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people would die. So what is it? He didn't care if thousands of people would die. He was just that selfish and wanted laid? Or he knows something that we don't? Well, some of us know that his model was a sham from the get-go, that he never took it serious. All of these people, you hear about how deadly this is. Why would you be out then? We see reporters, we see police, all these people that are, we're going to this beach and we're breaking this up and we're breaking that up. You wouldn't be going there. If that was the Black Plague, you wouldn't be out there. So why are they out there? Or how about we saw Cuomo yesterday lecturing us all as he stood feet away from people. You have to wear a mask. And people that don't wear a mask probably should face legal ramifications. He didn't have a mask though. Time after time we see, and this is exactly the same model we see in other areas where people propose government restrictions on your rights. Listen to the good socialists, right? Listen to the open borders people. Oh, open borders. Not for them, though. They live in gated communities. We're going to take away your gun rights as they have armed guards. Oh, fossil fuels are bad as we fly on our private jets. It's always the same thing. And that's the original reason that I became skeptical of all of this. Look, do I think there are people in good faith that are really worried about this virus and accept the lockdown? Sure. But the leadership, the same people that every time they talk about, here's a crisis, now we're going to need to sacrifice, it's always us normal people that sacrifice. It's never them. They're not taking illegal immigrants into Martha's Vineyard. They're not taking it into their gated communities. They're not relaxing. Remember, AOC was asked, why don't you take the subway when you're going into Congress? She says, oh, that's inconvenient for me. Same with Bernie Sanders flying first class. How is that? How about Cenk Uyghur, right? Begging his people at the Young Turks not to unionize. It would hurt him. You see, it's always these people with power and with wealth and resources. It's one set of rules for them and a different set of rules for the normal people. Now look, I'm not going to act like I'm not right-wing or I'm not biased. Of course I am. But one of the good things about me is what I advocate in government is the same freedom for me and you, regardless if we agree or disagree, regardless if you're wealthy or you're poor, etc. So you might hate what I suggest, but at the very least, I'm advocating applying the same standards to everyone. If these people were serious that this was an apocalyptic virus, they wouldn't be doing these things. If they were serious, they wouldn't have been fighting about funding the Kennedy Art Center or Harvard or Carnival Cruise Lines or abortion centers. If this was seriously an apocalyptic scenario where this disease was going to kill millions of people, then they would have approached it differently. But they didn't, which is how you knew from the get-go to be skeptical of this. Every single time the government says, we need to take your rights away, you should make them explain down to the minutest detail exactly what rights, exactly how will they be taking them away, exactly how long, exactly what gives them the justification for doing this, what is their threshold for thinking that they could do this, what is the threshold for when they will relax these rights, how can we make sure that this won't be used flippantly in the future, how can we be sure that the taking away of our rights will help solve the problem that they're addressing? None of that at any level, the state or the federal level, was done. And yes, I lump Trump into this too. Now I know people will give me heat. Oh, but are the Democrats better? No, the Democrats aren't better. They're terrible. But I expected big government Democrats to be for globalization, to be for socialist policies, mass redistribution of wealth. That's their platform. But when you see the other side do it, then what hope is there? Let's be honest, Trump is trying to have his cake and eat it too. On one hand, he's criticizing the lockdown. On the other hand, he's supporting it. Just the other day, he tweeted out, oh, Sweden did the wrong thing. Sweden's model was incorrect. Look at how many people died in Sweden compared to Finland. Well, look at how many people died in Sweden compared to Italy, Germany, and the UK. Per capita, the number's less. So let's get to those stats. Whoop. Sorry, my fat fingers. Make this a little bigger. Here we go. So this is from Statista.com. This is coronavirus deaths worldwide per 1 million population as of May 6, 2020 by country. So that's of today. I've separated it so we can see the deaths per million. That's what we're looking at. Belgium, number 1. They're a lockdown country. Spain, number 2. 701.8 deaths per million in Belgium. Spain, 548 deaths per million. Italy, lockdown, 485. The UK, lockdown, 442. France, lockdown, 380. Netherlands, I'm not sure what the Netherlands did. 299. Sweden, not locked down. 280. So almost 200 more deaths per million. Close to what? 40% more deaths per million in the UK that had one of the biggest lockdowns than a country that had the least stringent lockdown. And yet Trump criticizes Sweden. Trump came out and criticizes Sweden. Now, why is Trump doing this? I don't know. I think that Trump's just the type of guy who wants this to be a win no matter what. So he's going to play both sides of the aisle. He wants his base to be able to say, see, Trump's against these lockdowns. He's trying to fight the corrupt Democratic governors. But on the other hand, he doesn't want people to have ammunition against him to say, Trump didn't care about these deaths. He was against the lockdown. So he's trying to play it both ways. And I'm sorry, that's not leadership. And that deserves to be criticized. I've lost tons of subscribers. I've lost friends over the fact that I called Trump out in this. I don't care. It's the truth. If you care about things like your rights, if you were the type of person that was against socialism and Bernie Sanders and the spending of trillions of dollars, then you should be against those sorts of policies no matter who is suggesting them. Not for them when your guy suggests them. That's not principled. You might dislike me. You might say, I don't like Rob's opinions anymore because I'm a Trump supporter, so screw Rob. That's fine. But at least know that I'm being authentic. It would be easy for me and others to just sit here and say, yeah, Trump's the man. But that's not what I'm going to do. Thanks, Augustus. Augustus is someone who's been great on this as well. I'm on a website called Above Top Secret. It's a blog where we discuss politics, conspiracy theories, and things like that. And Augustus and me, and there's a handful of others, got grief from the get-go. And this is one of the things that I think's important. Remember who had these opinions on this lockdown and the taking away of our rights and the destroying of our economy? Remember who held the opinion that that was the wrong thing to do when it was not popular? Remember who criticized Republicans and Trump for endorsing these lockdowns when it wasn't popular? Because the longer it goes on, the more you can see people getting upset and getting tired of being lied to and having their rights and their livelihood taken away. So now you'll start to see Republicans come out of the woodwork as their polling numbers show, oh, okay, now switch your stance. Now it's not popular to be for the lockdown, so you're going to switch. Those people aren't principled. You should vote those people out, regardless of what letter's next to their name. We need leaders. Who's been a leader on this? Rand Paul's been good. Massey's been good. Who else can you suggest that's been a leader on this? That came out initially and said, these taking away of our rights are unacceptable. Maybe there are some. I heard from my friend Billy Allred that the guy who beat me in the special election, Fred Keller, and Billy's a guy I would trust on this. He said Fred was actually pretty vocal that he was against the lockdown. If so, I applaud Fred. And I'm trying to reach out to his team to get some, what he said in the press, or what he said in his, on the Hill or whatever that suggested that. But even if he did say that, and again, if he did, I applaud him. I really do. But how vocal was he? And this is a problem we see constantly with the Republicans, or not even the Republicans, but people that are on the side of freedom. They lose the battle. They're constantly on the defensive. Why wouldn't you have been out there, if you were a representative who is against this lockdown, why wouldn't you have been out there in every platform you could have, shouting to the heavens how wrong this is? Because in my lifetime, this is the biggest infringement of rights I've ever seen in this country. So why is it up to some fat guy like me with 8 people watching to be shouting at the heavens for the past 2 months? While the person that I represent, who supposedly shares my ideals, who claims that they're a constitutional conservative, they've been relatively silent on the issue. Sure, they'll throw some, the Democrats are holding up the small business loans, garble, garble, garble. But that's nothing. So that's my take on that. Now, let me talk briefly, and I've done this before. It's a very difficult concept, so I'm going to try to explain it again. I can't find it now. I was looking for it right before I started here, but the UK is now the number 1 country for deaths in Europe. It surpassed Italy. And I forget what the position of the person that was, Bane, I think his name was, which may be prophetic, Bane, like the guy that took over Gotham. But he came out and he said, listen, let's not compare us to other countries. It's hard to compare country to country because of different healthcare systems and the different ways that people tallied COVID deaths. Well, wait a minute. That says a lot right there. Right? You mean countries tally the deaths differently? Huh. So does that mean we can't exactly trust the raw numbers that they seem to be suggesting? Is he suggesting then Italy's not? Because they surpassed Italy. So is he suggesting, in Italy, they're not calling all COVID deaths? Because it seems to me that all the whistleblowers coming out of Italy say the exact opposite. Or is he suggesting that the UK is counting way more COVID deaths than would normally be the case? And healthcare systems, that's something that I hear when I suggest this. They're like, well, you can't compare the UK to Sweden because the difference in their healthcare system. First off, I'm told in the United States all the time that we should look at the UK as a model for what a successful healthcare system looks like. So how is it then that it's such a disaster? That it's worse than even Italy? In fact, we were told with Italy, right? Weren't we told with Italy? Oh, their healthcare system's a disaster. So how's the UK worse or on par with it? But I'm sure we'll hear the need for socialized medicine any day now. Once people are done fear-mongering about this virus, that'll be one of the steps that come later. Oh, if only we had Medicare for all, no one would have died. Really? Let's look at how that's working out in the UK. Why is it worse there per capita than the United States if their healthcare system's so much better? Secondly, isn't it interesting now to hear we can't compare country A to country B? Because that was my argument from the get-go. When Tom Wolf, my governor, first put the lockdown in Pennsylvania, you know what he cited? Italy. Oh, look how many people. Now, he cited Italy at a time where only 3,500 people had died. He didn't say, look at how bad Italy could get. He said, look at the amount of deaths in Italy now. 2 months in, 3,500 dead. Now, that's despite the fact that in a normal year, the flu kills 2,800 a month in Italy. Yet Tom Wolf's never suggested setting down Pennsylvania over that. But nonetheless, 3,500 deaths. He said, oh, see, look at Italy. I said, wait a minute. Italy had Hug a Chinese Person Day. Their population in general is way older than ours. Their healthcare system's a mess for elderly people. Why would we be looking at them analogous to the United States and saying we now have to take unprecedented action to take away your rights and collapse the economy because of Italy? But that's what Pennsylvania did. And that's what many other states did. And that's what the federal government did. Now, all of a sudden, once the numbers go the other way, they say, oh, we can't compare ourselves to other countries. This is just like they said, hey, you have to trust the experts. Me and you are not experts, so we have to listen to Dr. Folke. You have to listen to Dr. Biertz. You have to listen to Neil Ferguson, who's banging his mistress while he has COVID and did the Imperial College study. You have to listen to all them. You can't question them. But then as soon as other scientists started to come out and say, actually, we did numbers that show that the virus is far more widespread and therefore less lethal than we originally thought, those same people that said you have to trust the experts, now all of a sudden they say, oh, there are problems with these experts. We need to go through this study with a fine-tooth comb. I don't trust these experts. Isn't that interesting? So trust the experts unless they disagree with me. And we have to look at other countries and say, oh, that country shows how bad it'll be here. But if it shows the opposite, then we don't look at other countries. It's impossible to look at other countries. Again, if you're someone who's literally concerned about getting to the truth, and maybe you disagree with me, maybe you think, look, I think the lockdown was necessary. That's fine. You could think that in good faith. I think you're wrong. But you wouldn't be hypocritical then when it comes to this. My stance has been, I think we should question all of the studies. My stance all along has been, I think we should be allowed to look at other countries, but understand that we shouldn't be enacting policies based solely on what they do. I'm not the one who's changing my standards, depending on what the evidence shows constantly. Again, who are you going to trust? Now, the last thing that it's worth talking about when this guy from the UK says, well, we can't look at other countries. This is an argument that's going to become quite evident. This is something that authoritarians and dishonest people specialize in. The reality of life is, very rarely do you see two situations that are completely analogous. There's almost always some minute difference. The question is the difference material to what you're discussing or not? Right? So, for example, like take a sports analogy. I could say, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback, or let's say this. I say, Peyton Manning's the greatest quarterback ever because he had the most touchdown passes at one point. I believe he did. Now, you could say, yeah, but look, when we go back in history, we can see that there were seasons where people didn't throw the ball as much, and therefore, on average, there weren't as many touchdown passes. So instead of just looking who has the most TDs, we should look at where do they compare versus their contemporaries, because the game has changed. That's a situation where the differences might make a difference. But if you were to say, well, actually, Peyton had more TD passes than Ben Roethlisberger because it was better to play in Denver and Indianapolis because the weather's better there. Yeah, I guess the weather's different, but that's not that wouldn't explain the discrepancies in the success of TD passes. I know I'm always using sports analogies and people are like, it's confusing. It's probably making it more confusing. So, is it true that if we look at the UK and we look at Sweden, that there are differences? Yes, that's certainly true. For example, we would have differences in the general health of the average populace there, the general age in the average populace there, the urban areas in each country or how densely populated it is. We would see differences in the healthcare system. We would see differences in dietary reasons, right? All sorts of things. Climate. All of those could lead to a difference in the mortality rate of COVID, the total amount of people that will die, the people that will die per capita, etc. That's all true. I'll concede that. What you see the authoritarians that want the lockdown, what they suggest is, well, therefore, we can't say that Sweden's model worked because it's a different country than our country, therefore our lockdown was justified. But here's the problem with that. That might make sense for some of the numbers. But remember what these people told you. The UK itself shut down based on the Imperial College model, which again said 500,000 people were going to die in Britain of the COVID disease. It's Asian COVID. Does that make it better? Peyton Manning and touchdowns. That's something I think that hurt. Peyton Manning was one of the guys that played the basketballs, I think. No. So, if, for example, well, let me put it this way. So they said 500,000 Brits would die. 2 days after the UK put their lockdown into place, the Imperial College said, okay, now only 20,000. This number was garbage. Everybody knew it. I knew it. Augustus knew it. Where did they get these figures? Why wasn't this being gone through with a fine-tooth comb? Instead, everyone's saying, hey, you can't question the experts. You can't question them. Can't question them. What science did they have that showed that the lockdown, 25 times more people would die in Britain if we didn't do a lockdown than if we did? Maybe if they would have said 500,000 people will die, and if we do these lockdowns, 100,000 will die. So we could save 5 times as many lives. That, at least then, is in the realm of possibility. But what they're basically saying is, it's going to be apocalyptic. 500,000 dead. But if you listen to us and give away your economy and all your rights, then almost no one will die. It'll only be 20,000. That's ridiculous. I saw no evidence anywhere. No one even tried to explain how a lockdown would have that much of an effect. Would be able to, so 20,000 people dead over how long? 500,000 over how long? How long did the lockdown have? Was this an indefinite lockdown? Only 20,000 will ever die of COVID if we stay locked down for 20 years? No one explained any of this. It was literally propaganda that was just supposed to tell people, don't question the government, accept the lockdown. A bunch of you will die if you don't. And if you do, you'll all be safe. That number was garbage. We have vaccines for the flu that aren't that effective. Diseases we treat with medication and vaccines don't have a success rate of saving 25 times more people. Yet somehow just staying locked down, that was going to do that. It made no sense. Now, what I and others had said from the get-go was they had set the conditions because they were able to have these lockdowns without providing any of the answers to the questions that I talked about. What exactly was their model? What was the probability of their model coming true? What were all the factors that went into their model? What was their threshold for how many people infected or dead before they felt it was necessary to lock down, take away people's rights, and destroy the economy? What was their proof of how many lives would be saved if we did these lockdowns? How many lives would be killed if we did these lockdowns? How long would the lockdown be necessary? None of that was answered. And I said, because they didn't answer this, we now find ourselves in a position like we did with the Patriot Act, and something I call Schrodinger's Patriot Act, which if you've listened to me before, you've probably heard this. But let's say the terrorist attacks happen, 9/11 happens, and so the government says, we need a Patriot Act. We need to be able to spy on your emails, your phone calls, take away your Fourth Amendment right to privacy. We need to do it to solve terrorism. So let's say we go back in time and we look at it and say, we passed the Patriot Act, and for the next 10 years, we don't see one terrorist attack on U.S. soil. Do you think that the government would then say, hey, it did its job, we no longer need to spy on you, terrorism's not a threat, we're going to rescind the Patriot Act? Of course not. They'll say, see, it was a success. You have us to thank for keeping you safe, so we're going to continue to violate your Fourth Amendment rights. Now, let's go back in time again and say they passed the Patriot Act. In the next 10 years, terror attacks quadruple. Do you think the government's going to say, well, taking away your Fourth Amendment rights didn't help anyways, terrorist attacks went through the roof, therefore we're going to rescind the Patriot Act? No, they're going to say, see, we were right to take away your rights. Look how bad terrorism is. Now we need to take away more of your rights. It's the exact same thing here. And even Augustus knows this, people that we've talked with that are on the other side of this that support the lockdowns, they admit, they're like, we have no way of knowing if these initial predictions were true. We have no way of knowing how many lives were saved from the lockdown. None whatsoever. And that's intentional, by the way. The governments and these scientists, they set that criteria intentionally. So no matter what, they're the heroes. If 1,000 people in the United States or the UK would have died, they would have said, see, we saved the day. Government taking away your rights saved the day. It would have been catastrophic if we didn't take away your rights and destroy the economy. But look, only 1,000 people died. Now, if 5 million would have died in the US or the UK, do you think they would have said, my God, the lockdown did nothing? All these people still died. So we crushed the economy, took away rights, and millions still died. Of course not. They would have said, see, the fact that millions died justified us taking away your rights. And we need to take away more of them now. There's no way of proving now whether or not the Imperial College and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Ferguson, if their predictions, their catastrophic predictions were going to be true or not. Except we don't live in a vacuum. We could see places. There's two ways we could prove it. One, we could look at places that didn't do those type of lockdowns and see if it was apocalyptic. Second, we could start doing randomized testing to see how many people had already had the virus. Because in order for their predictions of millions to be dead, you would need to have a very high mortality rate. I believe like above 5%. Well, it turns out every study after study that actually does randomized testing is finding the mortality rate to be far under 1%. So that would prove that their initial predictions are ridiculous. Because in order for that many people to have died, and if the mortality rate's like 0.01%, which it'll be higher than that, but you see what I'm saying, there would have to be more people infected than there are people in the United States to achieve that 2.2 million. So that's how we can know they were wrong, or we can know they're wrong by looking at other countries. So take Sweden, for example. Sweden didn't do the lockdown. Now, have people died of COVID in Sweden? Yes. Have I or anyone with any credibility whatsoever claimed that people wouldn't die of COVID if we didn't have a lockdown? No, of course not. They were going to die if we had a lockdown, if we didn't. The lockdown could have potentially saved some. The question was it worth the amount saved of how many would be killed or harmed by taking away their rights and collapsing the economy? That's what the question should have been. Instead, we got this flippant, oh, you don't care about people dying. Well, I just did a whole segment showing how my strategy of protecting the vulnerable would have led to less people dying in nursing homes. Explain to me how shutting down a nail salon or a hair salon is helping people dying if over 50% are in nursing homes. And our governments, in the effort to keep hospitals empty, are telling people they have to stay in these nursing homes and basically have a death sentence. So we look at Sweden, and yes, they'll say, well, it's different. It's apples to oranges. Sweden and the UK is different. Again, that's true. But that would only explain a small portion of these numbers. And I'm trying to think of an analogy that would explain this. If I said, look, more home runs occur in Coors Field in Colorado because the air's thin. So that explains the discrepancy why more home runs are hit in Coors Field by the Rockies than any other team in baseball. That would make sense. But what if the Rockies one year hit 100 times more home runs than every other team? You know, the closest team to them is the Yankees. The Yankees hit 100 total home runs. The Rockies hit 1,000. The discrepancy in the ball fields wouldn't cover that vast difference. Even though they're different, you would not accept to just say, well, they're two different ball fields, so we're not going to ask questions. You would say, no, something's going on. Even though they're two different ball fields, maybe if the Rockies hit 200 and the Yankees hit 100, that would explain it. But 1,000 compared to 100, that's incredible. 10 times the amount. That's what we're seeing here. They said 25 times more people would die without a lockdown. There is no reason that wouldn't be true country to country. So it's not just, okay, Sweden's doing a little better than the UK. They're actually doing a lot better than the UK, despite the lockdown. It's, according to Neil Ferguson and the people that pushed the lockdown, the experts, Sweden should be a catastrophe right now. It should have been overrun. Their hospital system should have been overran. I don't care how many people try to come on and tell you, but wait a minute, their population density is different. Wait a minute, their average age of person's different. Their healthcare system's different. Okay, that might explain for 2-3 times the amount of deaths. Not 25. 25 times more people should die without a lockdown. If that's the case, then what they're implying is, had Sweden locked down, instead of seeing, what were the numbers again? Instead of seeing in Sweden we've had 2,854 deaths, 25 less times that would have died had they done the lockdown. That's what the Imperial College study would have told us, or give or take a time or two for the difference in countries. So they should have had roughly 280 deaths. That's nonsense. We don't see those numbers anywhere. This was something in the debate community we did all the time. In debate, oftentimes you don't win. For those of you who don't know, I was in collegiate debate. I was pretty damn good, too. Most of the time you don't win, no matter how much better you are than your opponent. You don't win every single argument you're talking about. In fact, one of the big weaknesses it takes a lot of people that are just new into debate is understand it's okay to concede some arguments. If you try to win every argument, you spread yourself out thin, and then you end up losing the most important argument. So oftentimes what happens is both sides will be winning some sort of offense. And you'll be saying, if you vote for them, then this would happen. There would be a war. And they'll say, yeah, but if you vote for them, then there'll be a climate disaster. And then you find ways of weighing those two impacts, is what we call them. One of the things people would do then is you have an incentive to make your impact as big as possible. So instead of saying like, hey, if we pass this job bill, then it'll, the Dow Jones will decline so much and thousands of people might lose a job. You want to say, if we pass this jobs bill, it'll crush the economy, which will cause a nuclear war. Right? And one of the things that people made the mistake of, they would exaggerate their impact so much that then they became so big that it would be impossible for them to solve. So let me give you an example. I might ask someone in cross like this, like, look, you say if we don't pass your plan, it's going to lead to an economic decline and that'll cause a nuclear war. Yeah. And can you explain how that'll happen? Well, when countries suffer economically, they engage in resource wars, and that might look like us fighting over, oil with Russia or China, and that would end up going nuclear. It would lead to the end of the world. And you'd say, okay, so your plan would happen immediately if we vote for you. Yeah. And how long would this war, are we talking like 5-6 years down the road will be this economic war with China? Oh no, it'll be immediate, like by the end of the week. Well, the problem with that is, if that's how soon this war is going to be, your plan can't solve it. Wars don't just happen like that, so there would already be gears in motion, and so there's no evidence you have that your plan would be able to stop a war that's literally a week away. Nothing. Passing the jobs bill stops a war that's a week away? That's totally nonsense. If you're right, we're already over the cliff. It's the same with like the climate change people, right? They overhype it so much. Okay, well then according to you, it's already too late. So why bother? Either you're wrong or you're right and we're all screwed anyways. So why cause undue suffering by crushing poor and middle class people economically? It's the same here. They exaggerated the threshold so much. They exaggerated how deadly the virus would be and how effective the cure would be so much that we could now see from countries that didn't go along with their cure that they were full of it. Now explain to me why Trump then would compare Sweden's per capita numbers to Finland instead of the UK or instead of the United States. Trump tweeted out, oh, Sweden did the wrong thing. Sweden's deaths per million is less than the UK's. UK's death per million again, 442. That's of today. Sweden's deaths per million, 280. About 40 times more deaths per million in the UK than Sweden. I'm sorry, 40% more. So why would Trump, if he's all about ending the lockdown, why would he say that? Why would he criticize Georgia? He said liberate Michigan. All these Democrat places, he was tweeting liberate them. But then when a Republican governor actually opens up, he says, oh, no, I think it's too soon. Now we're starting to see all of these models coming out showing, oh, if we open up these states, hundreds of thousands of people will die. Let's say that's true for a minute. How did they come to that number? What is the model right now? How did they come to this? And this is the problem, because we've just been conditioned to trust the experts. No one asks these serious questions. So let me give you an example. Here's the situation as it occurred in Pennsylvania. We had in late February, when things started to take off, or maybe it was early March. I don't have the specific dates, but the first thing that happened was our governor put together a team and they started doing press conferences. And at those press conferences, they were asked by my friend Todd Bartley, who at 104.1 Williamsport, his station asked, because they're the only station worth a crap, basically in the country that I've seen. I'm sure there's good out there, but he's the best I've seen asking all these questions. And he asked, how will you work with counties to determine what's the best solution county to county? And again, I'll explain just briefly. If you're not from Pennsylvania or don't know it well, we have 3 big cities, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Erie. And then everything else is way less populated. So people joke around and call the interior of Pennsylvania, center of Pennsylvania, Pennsyltucky, right? We're all, rednecks. I'm happy to be, I love it here. I love being from a rural area. Absolutely love it. But anyways, neither here nor there. It's vastly different. The way it looks on the far east and the far west of the country is way different than in the center of the country. And so Wolf was asked, how will your policies reflect that? And he says, yes, we'll be talking to county leaders. We'll be doing what we can to work to see how many people are infected, how many people passed away, and what's the proper solution for each county. A week after he gives that answer, Wolf locks down the entire state. So he contradicts exactly what he said 1 week earlier. Now, he's not answering what was the science, what changed that justified that. And so at one point, we had seen 47 counties in Pennsylvania with less than 100 COVID cases. 39 of those counties had less than 50. Not deaths, cases total. My county, I think, is up to like 20 or 30. 1 death, I think we have. So he's asked again. This would have been, let me think, it was April. This would have been early to mid-April, because it was 2 days before I did my radio interview. And he was asked, how do you explain to someone in a place like Sullivan County that has 0 reported COVID cases why their businesses need to be shut down? And his team responds, well, the problem is the virus is very widespread and it's already in Sullivan County. It's just that the people that have it there are asymptomatic. And so if we opened up now, it would be the worst. It would then cause the spread to boom. But that argument contradicts itself. First off, wait a minute. I was told by people that if I believed that the mortality rate was far lower because the virus was far more widespread and many asymptomatic people had it, I was told that that's being a China shill. I'm shilling for China saying that. So now we have the official governor of team in Pennsylvania admitting, yes, many people have it that are asymptomatic. And if it's already spread, then follow-up question. If it's already spread to Sullivan County, 1, you're admitting you have no idea what the numbers are then. So why should we be locked down? By the way, that's true of not just of Pennsylvania, but of the country as a whole. Basically, at this point, everyone will admit, well, we didn't know. When we did the lockdown, we didn't know. When did it become the default? We don't know, so we'll take away your rights. We don't know, so we'll crush the economy. Because we don't know. Again, That's the biggest threat in all of this, more than even the economy. If we set a precedent, Americans are willing to accept anytime there's some unknown fear out there, our precedent is to shut everything down. It's the end of the country. Because the government will exploit that time and time again. They're experts at fear-mongering. They'll find ways to make sure that your rights are constantly taken away and that they're getting your money, and they will erase the middle class and usher in the globalism that they want. That's exactly what will happen. They'll make you totally reliant on the government. That's what they want. That's the end of the country. Even more than this economic pain, and it will be significant economic pain. And certainly more than the virus. So we see that, which is going on. That if it's already spread and it's asymptomatic, you don't know what you're talking about, so why are we defaulting to this? And if it's asymptomatic, then why is the lockdown helping? If it already spread to Sullivan County despite the lockdown, then what good is the lockdown doing? But they didn't answer any of that. So then, after that occurred, that question was on a Wednesday. The following Monday, there was a rally in Harrisburg against the lockdown. Several days after that rally, Governor Wolf comes out and you know what he says? Good news. We're going to now go back to a policy of state-by-state recognition, or county-by-county recognition. And on May 8th, we'll open up the first of the counties. There's a color system, so we'll be in yellow. My county will be in code yellow. But basically, it's opening up a lot of businesses, but there's going to be restrictions, etc., etc. The counties that have less cases will deal with that way. The counties that have more will continue to be locked down. Now, here's the problem. So many people against the lockdown are like, yes, that's a victory. And sure, in a way, it's a slight victory, but the damage has already been done. And just because the policy is heading towards a direction you want doesn't mean that we should stop and not ask serious questions. So here's a serious question that needs answered. On Wednesday, week 1, you said, no, we can't go county by county because if we did, the virus is already in all these counties, and if we opened up county by county, it would spread everywhere. Even way worse. We'd be back to square one. That's what you said on Wednesday. And then the following Wednesday, you said, good news, we're going back to county by county. So you started off saying, oh yeah, obviously it's not one size fits all. It's county to county. Then you said, no, it's one size fits all. That's the only way to do it. And then you said, okay, we're going back to county to county. Can you show me in each step of the way how the science changed to justify that? What are the experts saying that went from Wednesday, day 1, to, oh, no, it has to be one size fits all, and relaxing restrictions in some counties would be devastating, to just 7 days later, oh, yeah, that's the way to do it. Can someone explain that to me? That's the type of stuff we're seeing. These mixed messages. We're told it's apocalyptic. You can't go out there. The CDC and the World Health Organization says masks. You don't need masks. Now, in my state, it's illegal to not have a mask in a place of business. So we went from the experts saying, oh no, what's this? This infection affects respiratory? No, a mask won't help. Something so stupid only an expert could say. You talk to any layman, they'd be like, I don't know nothing about illness, but masks probably couldn't hurt, probably help. Nope, there's the CDC and the World Health Organization saying, no, masks don't work. Now it's illegal to not have a mask in Pennsylvania in a place of business. And then we're told, oh, it's apocalyptic. Only essential businesses could be open. But the candy store could be open. The liquor stores could be open in some states. Churches can't. Your place of business, your livelihood that you go to work, it can't be open. The salon can't be open. But the candy store is. The landscaping company is. What is with these mixed messages? Our president himself says, open up Michigan. It's absurd that Michigan's closed down, but keep Georgia closed. How does this make any sense? These mixed messages, again, it's either gross incompetence or corruption. From everyone, at the state level, almost everyone. At the state level, at the federal level. We're told we need to spend trillions of dollars because it's a super duper emergency right now. People are suffering economically, so we have to spend trillions. People are suffering from the virus, so we have to spend trillions. But we're going to quibble over how much money to send Harvard and the Kennedy Arts Center. Quiet down out there. Like, how do you justify these things? So that's what we're seeing over and over. The Swedish model wasn't the way to go. Now we're being told, oh, if you open up, all of a sudden things are going to get bad again. But wouldn't they have known that initially? See, if we'd have forced them to answer questions initially when they talked about a lot, and this is what they say, they act like they knew it all along. It's like, oh, of course a lockdown for only 2.5 months won't work. It's got to be longer than that. If we undo the lockdown now, it's like we didn't even have a lockdown. Then why weren't you honest with the American people up front about that? Why didn't you say, we have to do a lockdown, it's going to have to be 6 months at least? Because then maybe the American people would have said, wait a minute, what? 6 months of a lockdown? How many lives will this save? How many people are you saying are going to die if we don't do this? But they didn't want to answer those questions. They said, it's a lockdown, it'll be over by Easter. It'll be short term. That's the kind of nonsense. Again, you take it for what you want. I think it's corruption. Maybe you think it's incompetence. But what other explanations are there? How many times do the models and the experts have to be wrong before we could question them? I don't know. Now, let me go back. I wanted to go back. I forgot to mention this. The story of the nursing home, if you weren't here for that, but I did a whole section on how nursing homes, particularly here in Pennsylvania, were basically telling, the Department of Health in Pennsylvania was telling nursing homes, don't send people infected with COVID to the hospitals because they were expecting an apocalyptic rush on the hospitals. And so they didn't want old people taking up beds that could be used for sick people that had a better chance. So they basically signed a death sentence and said, all of you old people in the nursing home must stay in these nursing homes. And they won't provide testing for the nursing homes. I showed all of that. But the idea of keeping hospitals, keeping actual people that need hospital care out of the hospitals, because hypothetically there could be this huge COVID run on the hospital. Let me tell you the story, and I've told this story, but I now think I can say I got permission to say, this is actually my brother that I'm talking about. So my brother's 22 years old. He started to have really bad seizures, I believe, around age 20. They just kind of came on, and they're really bad. So much so that just this year alone, he's had seizures so bad that he shattered both of his shoulders, his collarbones. Tore a rotator cuff. I mean, terrible, really bad seizures. When he has them, he almost always has multiples at a time. So he'll have one and then 20 minutes later have a really bad one. And so these aren't, I work in the healthcare field, so oftentimes you're told if it's just a normal run-of-the-mill seizure, you don't have to go to the emergency room or to the hospital. But these are so bad that he goes because they're that bad. So he was scheduled to have brain surgery. This brain surgery, it was a 2-part surgery. The first was they cut into his head and then they put electrodes or something, and then they could tell where the seizures are coming from in the brain. And then the second surgery, they operate on that section. So the first part was scheduled, and then it's usually a month to 2 months later, they do the second part. So he got good news at the beginning of this, which was the hospital in Pittsburgh where he was going to go, they actually were going to move his schedule ahead because so few people were going in for surgeries. But then he got a call on one, I believe it was a Friday, that actually his surgery was canceled. It was deemed non-essential. Brain surgery, non-essential. Abortions, essential. Brain surgery, non-essential. Brain surgery, non-essential. I mean, how insane is that? Okay, and I'm just one person telling this story. There are probably thousands upon thousands of people that have similar stories to this. So around that time, that same day, my brother happens to have a bad seizure. Now, we live in Clarion County. I don't live with my parents or my brother anymore, but we're close to the county line, and so they went to the hospital in Jefferson County, Brookville Hospital. At this point, Brookville had, I can't pinpoint it, either 0 or 1 COVID case in the county. So they go to the hospital from this county, rural Pennsylvania. He's having a seizure. He goes in an ambulance. They tell my mom she can't go in. They'll take care of it. She can't go in because they're worried about COVID. Okay. So my brother's in the hospital. He later said it looked empty. And they rushed him out in like 40 minutes. So my mom's shocked. She goes back to pick him up. It's a 20-minute drive to the hospital. In the time it gets her to get him in the car and come back home, he has another terrible seizure. and possibly tears his rotator cuff. Though I think he didn't, thank goodness. So they had to call the ambulance again. And all of this was because my mom wasn't able to tell them he always has multiple seizures, and they were in a hurry to get him out because they're worried about COVID. So here's a person who needed serious medical care that's booted out of the hospital because in rural Pennsylvania, in a county with one COVID case, they're getting advice from the state level that says any minute now there could be thousands of people that run in with COVID. Even if they did get a bunch of COVID cases, it wouldn't happen like that. It would be a slow trickle that would crescendo. But all of these little rural hospitals, they're operating as if, we could end up just like New York City. Now, a good end to the story is I was told that it was federal guidelines, not the state, but federal guidelines that deemed my brother's brain surgery non-essential. But they revoked that. They looked at his situation individually, so he ended up getting the surgery later than he would have elsewise, but he did get it. And it was a success. But how many other people are going through situations like that? Tucker said last night, we could tell that certain Congress people have gotten work done, cosmetic work. But if you have a broken knee, sorry, you can't go. One of the people I work with has a dental issue. Can't get it taken care of. It's all in who you know. It's all in how much power do you have. One set of rules for you, the peons, the plebes, another for them. The people with power. The haircut was essential. That's essential. My brother's brain surgery is non-essential. The mayor of Chicago's haircut, that's essential. You see? You see how that works? Now that's just one story. How many times does that happen? We saw the story with the nursing homes. That's what they're doing with the nursing homes. Oh, no. We can't have you in the hospital. We're worried that so many people are going to come into the hospital. And so you just need to die, person in the nursing home. Yet I'm told, who my suggestion from the get-go was, screw this lockdown. I refuse to accept the taking away of my rights unless all of these questions are answered thoroughly. I refuse to accept economic destruction to save people from an illness unless it's catastrophic, which I saw no proof of. I was told because of my positions in just questioning the experts and the politicians that have a track record of lying to us to obtain power every single time. I was told by questioning them, I wanted old people to die. That's what I was told. Meanwhile, the people telling me that want old people to die. Or maybe they don't want it, but they are endorsing policies that they know will lead to the deaths of old people in nursing homes. And Augustus, that's a good point too. Look, one of the things is I almost got hired by Trump's campaign. I didn't take the job because I wouldn't give up my social media accounts. But that's fine. That's their rules. No hard feelings there. But I volunteered for Trump for months. My channel has been largely supporting Trump. Just go back a year from now, check out any random video. I guarantee it's bashing the Democrats, probably defending Trump. Now, I criticize Trump and things like that. But people have this gut, well, if Trump says it's okay, then it must be okay. You don't understand. He's signing his own, well, I don't want to put it that way. He's collaborating in his own political destruction. My friend Carlos says, look, it's all about impeachment. They're trying to get stuff on Trump, whether it be Corona, anything he does, they're going to try to use that for impeachment. That's what they're going to try to say. And there's truth to that. But I think there's another level. See, the Democrats will pull out any dirty trick to get power back. And not just the Democrats, the establishment in general. Don't forget about the Mitt Romneys and the Cruz on the Republican that are just as bad. That establishment wing will do anything power. They'll spy on Trump. They'll use the FBI as a weapon. Whatever. We're seeing it now with the Flynn saga, with the FISA-Gate scandal. I've been on that story for 2+ years. Of course, that's what they'll do. But There's another level of it now, too. What if they can't win? So if you're running for office and you have all these ideas that'll give you power, but you can't win, what's the next best thing? You try to use the legal system to get your opponent taken out? Okay. Or how about this? You stack the deck so that your opponent does the exact same policies that you wanted. So at the very same time that Trump was flying a banner over Dallas, I think it was Dallas, that was mocking socialism, he's leading the charge for the biggest wealth redistribution in the history of the country. How does that make any sense? How hasn't every single action that's been taken at the federal level and at the congressional effort been a complete and total victory for the Democratic Party? Every single mail-in ballots, check. Wealth redistribution at unprecedented levels, check. Government power and oversight over your rights at unprecedented levels, check. A bunch of Green New Deal garbage that they were trying to push through, check. As far as like on that level, as far as, you know, meat industry suffering, shutting down non-essential businesses that they wanted shut down anyways. And it's not just Trump, we're the Republicans. It's unbelievable. And so Trump now, and I have people that, and Augustus knows this as well, people that were some of the most vitriolic socialist bashers, I hate socialism, wealth redistribution, I hate it, are now the most voracious defenders of it because Trump's doing it. So, oh yes, this socialism's good. Now all of a sudden socialism's wonderful. Look, if you're a socialist, you're wrong. And by the way, I'm for some very small social safety net. Some people would disagree with me there. That's fine. But my thing is this. I say this over and over. You have no idea. I have tons of left-wing friends, tons of them. I have self-avowed socialist friends. I do. I disagree with them, but at least I respect their consistency. If you're the type of person that spent 2 years saying Bernie sucks, socialism sucks, and now you're embracing socialism because your guy did it, I have no respect for that. If you liked socialism and you were like, yeah, this stuff's awesome, but you get upset when Trump does it, I have no respect for that. I expect people to disagree with me. This might come as a shock to some of you. I'm not always right. I get it. But don't be a hypocrite. You know? Why would you ever allow politics to damage your own reputation or your own credibility? That's what I didn't understand about Trump's election in the first place, particularly the people that hate him, though I'm sure that's true of people that like him too. But I admit I'm biased, so I'm seeing it through that lens. People that would just like, look at this Joe Biden Me Too situation. Now, there are nuts people out there that probably believed #believe all women. But 95% of them pushing that against Kavanaugh, it was just about politics. It was about Roe v. Wade. They hate Trump. They hate Kavanaugh. They thought that it could affect the right to abortion. And so they sacrificed their personal integrity by pushing forth something so absurd that anyone with any objectiveness could see was absolutely asinine. Believe all women? Your genitalia means you're believable or not? It was absurd. Everyone knew it was absurd. And it didn't take a genius to realize, if you're a dude and you say believe all women, eventually a woman might accuse you of something. It didn't take a genius to see that. That was obvious. And now we see that's exactly what happened. And 90% of those people that wanted Kavanaugh out and said he's a rapist now believe that Joe Biden isn't. They don't believe Tara Reade. Why? And it did. Okay, we could talk about the political ramifications of that and how it's bad for the country and all that. But just on a personal level, if you're one of those people, why would you let some national politics story destroy your own credibility? Why would you do that? Like, at the end of the day, politics is politics. Look, and I'm concerned as anyone. I love this country. I love the freedoms this country offers. You could watch my video at the top of my channel, 7 minutes, why I think this is the greatest country ever. right? I've taken flack for it. I've argued with people why that's the case. It's all about the individual and personal rights and responsibilities. That's what makes our country the greatest. Because it focused on the individual like which almost no other country in the world was doing or still does to this day. Right? That's what I focused on. So despite me loving this country, and I truly don't want to be the generation that sees it fall apart finally, still, more important than that, it's me, the individual, my relationships, my reputation, who I am as a person. Can I look myself in the mirror every night? No matter what we agree or disagree with politically, that's still the truth. You ultimately judge yourself. Why would you sacrifice your own integrity just to get some political point? It makes no sense to me. So whether it be that Me Too crap, whether it be I was against deficit spending under Obama, but I'm for it for Trump. Like any of this stuff, it's just like, dude, just be consistent. I'll respect you more. I might disagree with you, but I'll respect you more. Yeah, geometry Biden couldn't have done it. I heard that. That's, on that note, why not show you a little New York Times article here today. I believe Tara Reade. I'm voting for Joe Biden anyways, says Linda Hirschman of the New York Times. It's so much. It's so good. I'm not even going to read the article. The headline says it all, right? And you're seeing other people say that. It's just this battle. Trump's so bad. This battle, I'm going to vote for someone that I think sexually assaulted a woman. I actually believe, look, I don't know if it happened or not, but it's important to beat Trump. At least I can understand that. But saying, no, I really believe that Joe Biden sexually assaulted that woman. But still, I'd rather have a sexual assaulter than someone I disagree with politically. It's so funny. These people are hilarious. It's too bad they run the country and the world, huh? So, yeah, that's about what I have today. I want to put out more on this Sweden business. Look, I think it's worth talking. I mean, I can show you some more here, I guess, real quick. Let's go back to my Twitter feed. This guy, Phil Kerpen's awesome. You should follow him. Actually, a really fun guy, too. Let me get down a little further here. He had something. Well, Kerpen tweeted this first, but this is from Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, retweeted this. CDC equates COVID-19 and flu. 5/1/20, so May 1st. COVID-19 hospitalization rates are similar to those in greater than 65-year-olds during recent high-severity influenza season. And for children 0 to 17, much lower than flu hospital rates during recent influenza season. So let's read what it says. This is from the CDC. From the week ending April 25th, 2020. Key points. Nationally, the percentages of laboratory specimens testing positive for COVID remain similar or decreased compared to last week. Okay. Nationally, visits to outpatient providers and emergency departments for illnesses with symptoms consistent with COVID-19 continued to decline and are below baseline nationally and in many regions of the country. They remain elevated in the Northeast and Northwest. The decrease in the percentage of people presenting for care with ILI and CLI may be due to a decline in COVID-19 illness. Reported levels of activity may be decreasing because of widespread adoption of social distancing efforts and changes in the healthcare seeking behavior. Yeah, okay. Little influenza virus activity has been reported in recent weeks, which, again, we would expect to see. This is an important point, right? Let's assume that every number that they're talking about of death of COVID is accurate. Now, I and others have talked about how we have proof and admissions that they're just signing COVID. There's incentives for doctors to say the deaths are from COVID because they get more financial help from the federal government. There's political motivations possibly for doing so. We know that doctors are defaulting to just signing COVID. And that's worth me talking about this brief story in Pennsylvania for those that don't know. I don't have this pulled up, but this did happen, and you could look into it. There was a day a couple weeks ago where 200 and something COVID deaths were added in Pennsylvania on one day, and they were divvied out on a county-by-county basis. 3 of those, I believe, were from Lycoming County, a small county in central Pennsylvania. The coroner of Lycoming County went to Facebook and posted a video explaining that as coroner, he would have been the one that certified that those people died of COVID, and he had done no such thing. In fact, he had not signed off that anyone had died of COVID. And so he was trying to reach out to someone in Governor Wolf's office to find out why his county was being attached to these COVID deaths. And then several other coroners in central Pennsylvania spoke up and said, yes, we too never signed a COVID death certificate, and yet we're being attributed some deaths to COVID. Tom Wolf then, who's basically having press briefings daily, decides to delay his press briefing while they get to the bottom of this. Initially, I read that they said it was a glitch, that these deaths actually didn't occur because of COVID and it was some sort of glitch in the system. Then his team responded, well, actually what it was prospective deaths, that the people at the Department of Health in Pennsylvania looked at these causes of death signed by the coroner and intuited from what the coroners had wrote that it must have been COVID, therefore cited it as a COVID death. But they now realize that wasn't the best thing to do, and they're now going to reclassify those deaths as non-COVID. All in all, I think it was 208 deaths that they had classified as COVID that they then, once called out, had to remove. At the time, that was 11% of all deaths in Pennsylvania were fraudulent, that were 11% attributed to COVID, that were fraudulent. Now, that's just one county or one state, because a few coroners that aren't interested in being partisan pundits, that aren't interested in getting wealthy over this, told the truth. They said no. If it happened once, it happened multiple times in other states as well. So the idea that we trust these numbers, all COVID deaths listed are accurate, is just not true. But for the sake of this argument, let's throw that out and say, fine, we will assume that the numbers they're reporting are accurate, right? The important thing is going to be, at the end of the day, even if those numbers are accurate, one of the questions we had to ask was, remember, we have over 3 million and change people die a year in the United States on an average year of all sorts of causes. Millions die of diseases and infections and things of that nature. My question was, how many people that would have died on average without COVID will be included in the deaths of COVID? And this has to do with many people that die of illnesses are already in poor health. You have all sorts of issues going on, whether you just be old or you have complications with diabetes or with cancer or immune deficiency disorders, things of that nature. And so then ultimately a lot of people end up dying, not because of their diagnosis of, diabetes or their diagnosis of an immune deficiency, but because they then get an illness on top of that, which it's just too much for their body at that point. So how many people that would have died from the flu or would have died from, some other regular pneumonia or something like that are actually being killed by COVID? That doesn't mean we shouldn't try to treat COVID, nor does it mean that their deaths don't matter. I'm just saying, the way to look at this won't be to say how many people died of COVID versus how many people died of flu, because we can see now flu deaths are way down. The way to look at this will be how many people die of infectious diseases on average each year, and how many people died of infectious diseases in 2020, of all infectious diseases. That's the number that's going to show us how many more people died of COVID. Because just because you died of COVID doesn't mean that you wouldn't have been someone who was included on the death on an average year of something like influenza or pneumonia or something like that. So just shouting these numbers, 70,000 dead of COVID, even if we assume all of those numbers are accurate, if the flu deaths are way down, flu may have killed a huge portion of that 70,000 in a normal year. Anyways, moving on here. Let me check my other screen. The overall cumulative COVID-19 associated hospitalization rate is 40.4 per 100,000, with the highest rates in people 65 and older, that's 131 per 100,000, and 50 to 64. Hospitalization rates for COVID-19 in adults 18 to 64 are higher than hospitalization rates for influenza at comparable time points during the past 5 influenza seasons. However, for people 65 and older, Current COVID hospitalization rates are similar to those observed during comparable time points during recent high-severity influenza season. Now, that's not deaths, that's just hospitalizations. So, for the most vulnerable population, those older than 65, they're about as equally likely to be sent to the hospital with COVID as they were with flu the past 5 seasons. Now, I was told repeatedly, it wasn't the deaths that we should be concerned with. It was overloading the hospitals. But if COVID's no more likely than influenza to put you in the hospital, then what justifies the lockdown? Now, the devil's advocate argument would be, but it's only that low because of the lockdown. But we have no proof of that. None whatsoever. Again, then how do you explain outliers like Sweden, South Dakota, Georgia, that show almost identical numbers on the curve as the places that had the lockdowns? And remember, we were being told, the hospitals are overwhelmed in New York City right now. Thousands will die because of the ventilator. They have makeshift hospitals. They're building, prisoners are having to build mass graves. That's not true. On average, the exact same amount of people basically are going, of the age that has the potential for dying, are going to the hospital as did for the flu the past 5 years. Again, if they're issuing this propaganda that we could prove isn't true, why should we believe them on everything else? Now, this part's very important. For children 0 to 17 years, COVID hospitalization rates are much lower than influenza hospitalization rates during recent influenza seasons. Now, why is that number important? What's one of the first things they did? They shut down schools. Why? All numbers across the world have showed this is very low chance, unless you're a very young infant or you're a child with pre-existing conditions. This disease is less deadly than the regular influenza for young people. Less. So why did we shut down schools? Why was that one of the first things that we did? It makes no sense. Only looking at the chat, it does make sense because it's about a power grab. It's about money. Now listen. Let me just give my final overview that I've talked about a lot on here, but it's worth saying again. I don't think they're going to come take our guns over this. I don't think you'll see FEMA camps. I don't think you'll see, like the World Health Organization guy said, coming into people's house, taking their children. You won't see that. You're seeing way worse than I anticipated, by the way. But my prediction, and I still believe it, is this. This isn't the final nail. This is the beginning of the end. The real danger is in setting the precedent. Because we didn't force them to answer questions before they locked down the economy and before they took away our rights. Inevitably, when it's lifted, people will say, thank goodness. Just like the government destroyed people economically, but then they sent them Trump checks and the people say, yay, thank you, government. They're the ones who devastated you. Why are you applauding them for sending you breadcrumbs? But that's what's going to happen. The government, with their propaganda machines in academia, in the entertainment industry, in the mainstream media, in Silicon Valley, they are going to push. We already see it. YouTube, Twitter, they're censoring people that disagree with the official narrative. They're setting the path that this is going to be deemed a huge victory on behalf of the government. And then they'll leave us kind of get back to normal. And then in 2 or 3 years, what you'll see is there'll be something more. If the Democrats win, it'll be almost immediate. It'll be climate change. They're going to say, we have to do this. It's going to kill us all. But there'll be another COVID or a West Nile or a terror attack that we're worried about. Whatever. And they'll lock us down again. Then they'll leave us kind of get back to normal. Then something else will come along. This will play out over the next 20 years or so. And then once it's generational, once we've learned, this is just part of life. We don't know. With any given time, the government might say, we need to lock down for 4 or 5 months. Okay. We need to spend $6 trillion more dollars. Sure. We were right last time. We kept you all safe last time. Right? Yeah. And things kind of went back to normal. Sure. So no danger in letting us take your rights away again this time. Yep. And then after this happens 4 or 5 times, that's when they'll finally institute we're not going to take no gun. It'll go from we're pulling your post off Facebook to we're sending the police to your house. We're going to arrest you if you disagree with this. We're taking away your guns. We need red flag laws for the same reason. We need to take away your right to speech. That's when you'll see the end game. Yeah, I saw the Veritas video today. It shows more. CBS had like some call center that was dealing with COVID and there were plants in it. Veritas is always wrong though, right? They're just propaganda. Well, CBS was forced to come out and admit, yes, you're right. That call center we were with, they did have plants there. We just didn't know it. Of course they didn't. Boy, if only we had more journalists like Veritas, more people like Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch. Those are people that are awesome. I'm just a commentator. Those people are out there doing more. Now, I wish I was reaching more people. I think I do a pretty good job, but, kudos to those people. And again, look, I look at things slightly different. To me, a lot of times I'll say stuff and people are like, yeah, but we already knew that. I'm like, oh my goodness, this corruption in the FBI. Yeah, we knew that. I think what we need to be doing, I say this all the time, you have the globalists, the corrupt, the authoritarians. The way they win is they keep the big mass of people in the center ignorant of what's really going on, of how corrupt they are. And then there's us that want to fight back against this corruption and want people to have their own lives and personal liberty and responsibility. The way we win is by showing that big mass of people in the center how corrupt the game is. But it's that big mass of people in the center that matter. The way we win is by telling the truth. The way they win, the globalists, the establishment, whatever you want to call it, is by hiding the truth. The Republicans that supposedly that's who you vote for to get rid of these establishment globalists are they're either involved, which many of them like Romney are, or they're inept. How well have they served us during this lockdown? How well have they protected our rights? Oh, wait, not at all. I believe that the reason that this is happening, the reason that this power grab is because the people, the establishment, the people that really run this country, the intel agents, the wealthy donors, the Gates, Bill Gates and the people like that, unelected bureaucrats, the establishment politicians, those people that really run the country, they want globalization. They want a one world government. And I don't think it's smoky people in rooms with black robes. They want it because it enables them to have one set of rules that they could do whatever they want with, to get incredibly wealthy and powerful in that system, and to create in the world haves and have-nots only. Because right now, there's a barrier to that system. And that barrier is people that are self-sufficient, that aren't corrupt, that work for a living, that don't need the government to be holding their hand, that make their own decisions. And the best example of that is the middle and working class in the United States. So that's the number one enemy to these people. That's what they need to eliminate. That's what open borders are about, getting rid of this population. That's what this shutdown's about, hurting us economically. That's what universal basic income's about. That's what socialized healthcare is about. All of it's about making us dependent on the government. And it's not just right-wing people that talk about the dangers of this. Even though I'm not a fan of postmodernism, go read someone like postmodernist Michel Foucault. He talks about the concept of biopower. And the idea is this: when you give the government the power to give you life, you also give them the power to take away your life. So once you're dependent on the government, that's it. It's like living at your parents' house. If you live at your parents' house, that's fine. They'll take care of you. But it's their rules. You're not going to be out past a certain time. You're not going to talk back to your parents. You're going to listen to whatever they say. That's what the government wants for us. They want neo-feudalism. They want everyone to be like San Francisco and LA. They want us to live in squalor on the streets like we're serfs. And they live up on their high castles. And they'll give us food and they'll give us shelter and they'll pat us on the head and say good boy and say that they really care about us until we criticize them. We have to worship them. We have to be thankful to them. And then they'll throw us the breadcrumbs. But if we criticize them, then we're no longer of use to them. That's what this is about, in my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I feel. And it seems That's how I feel, and it seems that every issue that we see come up fits more and more in with that criteria. If you're a Trump supporter and you're like, how dare you criticize Trump? I'm not criticizing Trump because I'm a Democrat, because now all of a sudden I'm a Soros supporter. I'm criticizing Trump because I see him enacting policies that benefit that globalist mindset. That's what my criticisms of are him. Am I having a stroke? That's what my criticisms of him are. There we go. You'd think for someone who talks as much as me, I'd know how to do it. So that's what I see coming. We have to triage. What is the biggest threat here? The virus will not take us out. Even if it killed 1% of this country, over 3 million people, our country would survive. Those deaths would be tragic. I don't say that flippantly. I don't want that amount of people to die. I never once suggested that government should take no action. I said from the beginning that the government should be working on helping the most vulnerable populations. They haven't. I explained to you today why that's led to increased deaths in those populations. So I'm not saying that number callously. I'm saying as a factual matter, this country would have survived 3 million people dying of an illness. Far worse will be the economic impact that could last decades. That already, no matter what happens, has wiped a large amount of people's livelihoods out. And it's going to get worse every single day that we stay locked down. Every single day. But we'll survive the economic fallout. We will. As horrific and terrible as it'll be. And it'll be way worse than the virus. We'll survive it. But what we cannot survive as the United States of America is setting the precedent that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution is just a piece of paper to crumple up and throw away whenever we feel like it. If we set the precedent that the government can take our rights away anytime they say, hey, there's a threat, that's the end of the country. We cannot survive that. That's why I'm so vehement in arguing against this lockdown. That's why I'm so adamant in arguing against the government being transparent, or arguing that they should be transparent against their lack of transparency. Because I see the writing on the wall. That's why I've been so angry about this. Not because people I know that are socialists were for this stuff. Of course they were. They've always been for massive government redistribution of wealth, massive government power, taking away people's individual rights. That's what socialism's about. Got it. It's because I've seen so many people that consider themselves conservatives or constitutional conservatives or fiscal conservatives jump in with both feet in defending spending trillions of dollars, taking away people's rights, all because their side said that it was necessary. And what that was I was kind of depressed about it, because you think that you believe your own garbage, and that's definitely a vice of mine. I believe what I say a little too much, and I started to believe, even though I didn't have a huge audience, people like me. And people waking up on their own, we're starting to see through the mainstream media. We're starting to see through the establishment. We're understanding that it's this game where they lie. And you can't believe anything they say without proof. And I thought the majority of people were waking up to that. I was wrong. I was dead wrong. This can be said to be nothing but an almost complete and total victory for the establishment. Almost complete and total victory for the voices that want to keep people ignorant and want to use fear to motivate people to give up their rights and to give up their personal responsibility. Almost a total victory. And even as more people are waking up and they're getting frustrated with the lockdown, it's not that they are suddenly saying, oh, I was wrong to give up my rights. Some are saying that. There's still a lot of people saying that. But what the majority of people is, it's just sheer exhaustedness. I'm getting exhausted with this. But that's malleable. They'll be able to, they bought into the fear and now they're just, okay, I'm ready to get back just because they're exhausted. Okay, let them get back. But we'll sell them the fear again and they'll buy it again. I said this all the time and no one wants to hear it, and it's an ugly topic. And I've heard people say, but Americans are different. The closest population to us, I would assume, is the UK, maybe Canada. But the UK's, our close cousins, I would say. similar beliefs, most of us. In the UK, we had, for 3 decades, young girls being gang raped, thousands upon thousands of them, while the police and the local politicians knew about it. This is not a conspiracy. This is fact. This is absolutely fact. Have they uprised? Have any of those police or local politicians been held criminally accountable for allowing and facilitating the gang rape of thousands of underage girls? Has one politician or police that facilitated that faced any sort of criminal justice? Are the people in the UK infuriated, protesting, taking back their government? No, instead they're protesting Tommy Robinson, a guy who's furious about this. If you can't get a population fed up about their own children being gang raped and their leaders facilitating it, what chance do we have of getting people fed up and infuriated over their rights being violated? And I know I've said this before and people say, oh, the US is different. You'll see. If you'd have told me 6 months ago people would have rolled over this way, I'd have said, no way. People are waking up. I was wrong. Yeah, I mean, that's just it. And, look, Edward Bernays, had it down to a science. He knew. I always quote this. I love this scene in the movie Men in Black, the original, right? Where Will Smith's kind of talking to Tommy Lee Jones, and he's like, people were, he says something about people, and Tommy Lee Jones says, a person's smart. People are dumb, stupid, fearful animals, and you know it. That's right. Individuals, smart. But as a collective, Bernays had it down to a science. How to influence people. Basically mass brainwash people. And one of the things I talk about, you heard me talk about in this channel for months, was I'm sick and tired of Trump supporters saying, Trump's got it locked up. He's going to win 48 out of 50 states. I'm like, you don't know that. You have no idea. You're underestimating the opposition and how corrupt they are. It doesn't matter. They could put Joe Biden up there, they could put a stump with a suit jacket on, and they still have a significant, I would still say they're the favorite to win because they're so corrupt. They'll bring out sexual assault allegations against Trump. I said they'll intentionally collapse the economy to harm Trump. And here we are. But then I violate my own rule because I'm like, don't have this hubris. My hubris was I thought people were waking up. I was wrong. So I was depressed about it. Plus, I was really busy with work stuff and my life. But now I'm kind of getting excited about it again. Because it's like, okay, let me put it this way. One of the best lessons I ever had in life was this. My second to last year of debate, I busted my butt. Me and my partner, we knew we were underdogs. We were the first ever state school, to my knowledge, to make it to the national debate tournament. I was one of the rare few people to ever make it to the national debate tournament that didn't debate in high school. So I was fighting an uphill battle. And for those of you who don't know, the national debate tournament's like the NCAA basketball tournament, except it takes 72 teams and each school's allowed to send up to 3 teams. So you usually get about 40 schools. So it was, for me, it was a big deal to make it. So I busted my butt my second to last year and I thought I did everything right. And we went to the qualifying tournament and we were 1 round short. We didn't make it. Or maybe it was 2 rounds, but we didn't make it. And I remember being mad about it. And then I started to think about that moment when I got home and I was like, life teaches you, the narrative around the world is that that you're the hero of your own story, that things kind of revolve around you. And if you do things the right way, then things work out for you. I've seen so many Rocky movies. You could have did a montage of me getting ready for debate and then I win, right? No, sometimes you lose. Sometimes you do things right, and guess what? You lose. And that was an awesome lesson for me because it was like, yeah, so what am I going to do? Am I going to sit here and mope, or am I going to try harder? Am I going to say, no, there were areas I fell short in? And then I did, that's what happened, and then we made it. That's how I'm approaching this. I need to do a better job. I need to encourage people to do a better job. I need to listen to people when they give me advice. I need to be doing things more consistently. I need to be reaching out to more people. I need to be growing as a channel. I need to be helping other people that are trying to grow, even ones that disagree with me. I need to run for office. I need to talk to people in my real life outside of YouTube about what we could do. right? So I'm kind of excited because I'm like, okay, I lost, not just me, our country lost. The Patriots lost. We got our asses handed to us. So we could give up or we could regroup. And so I'm going to regroup. That's what I'm doing. So I know I'm just a very small person. I'll probably never make a difference. But all I could do is what I do. And I'll try to influence those few people around me. So you might have noticed normally a video like this, I'd have 40 people watching at one point here. I criticized Trump, down to 10. But that's okay. Those people that are with me, I thank you immensely, even if you disagree with me. It really does mean a lot to me. If I said anything, I need to repackage my passion, I think sometimes I fly off the handle a little too much, though it is who I am. So I'm going to be trying to do stuff like that. How can you help me if you're someone that wants to help? One, you could do your own stuff, do your own channel, run for office yourself. If you're doing anything like that and you need help, let me know. I don't have a huge audience, but I'd be interested in helping. Second, you could follow me. I think there's a link in the description where you could support me on Patreon. If you're on YouTube, you could do a super chat. On DLive, you could send me lemons or whatever. Soon, I went through the approval process to get memberships for my YouTube channel. I don't know how long that'll last because, YouTube is YouTube, but it is what it is. So there'll be different tiers of memberships that you could be on there so you can support me financially. But even more important than supporting me financially, because look, I'm a broke person. I would love to support a bunch of people financially. I can't, so I totally get it. Don't worry about it. Your money's probably better served with you than with me or with some other cause anyways. But I would appreciate if you donate. But one of the things you can do is like and subscribe and share my videos with people. I know these live streams are tough to share. Who the heck wants to sit around and listen to some fat guy ramble on for 2 hours? I got that. But I am trying to put more 5-6 minute videos up. So if you like any of those, just, put it on your Facebook page, like and share, put it on your own page. I don't care. You have total permission to put it wherever you want, as far as that goes, within reason, I guess. So yeah, please, it would really mean a lot to me if you could like and share those. Also, if you're one of my mods or even just someone else that would want to help, I started podcast formats, which will basically just be these live streams you're watching now, except it'll be audio versions of them. That's going to be available on places everywhere from iTunes to Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and a bunch of other places. What you can do is just get that word out there that you could follow me on those podcast platforms, and that would really help me out a lot too, because I'm not doing so well there. So, all right, well, thank you so much, everyone. Look for me to be putting out that video of my friend Billy Allred's audio he had with the confrontation with the governor's security guards here in Pennsylvania. And at some point this week, I'll be putting out a video on Sweden's numbers. I'll be on my friend Sarah Corrier's channel tomorrow evening at some point, and I should be doing another radio interview this Saturday, I think from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., though I'm not sure on the times of that right now. So I should be putting a lot out. So I'm going to go get the kitchen cleaned up and start dinner before my wife gets off work so I don't get in trouble. So thank you, everyone, though. I do really appreciate it. You all mean a lot to me. I'm humbled that people would listen to what I'm saying. I really am. So thanks so much. I hope everyone's staying safe out there, and I hope you're making the best of this bad situation. Thank you so much. Have a good one.